the bullet that tore through Cole Grayson's shoulder in the dusty streets of Laramie, Wyoming, during the spring of 1878 was meant for someone else. And that was the first thing Emma Dalton learned about him when she found him bleeding against the wall of her family's general store. She had been closing up for the evening, her father already gone home to tend to her ailing mother, when she heard the gunshots echoing through the street. Most folks in Laramie knew to stay inside when trouble started, but Emma had never been one to follow the safest path. She rushed to the door, peering out just in time to see a man stagger backward, his hand pressed against his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. He collapsed against the wooden planks of her storefront, and without thinking, she threw open the door. "Get inside," she said, grabbing his good arm and pulling with all her strength. He was heavy, solid muscle beneath his dusty coat, but he helped as much as he could, stumbling through the doorway. She slammed the door behind them and locked it, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "You should not have done that," he said through gritted teeth, his face pale beneath the shadow of his hat. "They might come back." "Then they will have to deal with me," Emma replied, already moving toward the back room where they kept medical supplies. Her hands shook as she gathered clean cloth, whiskey, and the needle and thread her mother had taught her to use for more than just mending clothes. When she returned, he had managed to sit up against a barrel of flour, his hat now on the floor beside him, revealing dark hair dampened with sweat. His eyes were a striking gray, like storm clouds, and they watched her approach with a mixture of pain and something else she could not quite identify. Not gratitude exactly, but perhaps surprise. "What is your name?" she asked, kneeling beside him and beginning to unbutton his shirt. Her fingers fumbled with the task, the intimacy of it suddenly overwhelming despite the clinical necessity. "Cole Grayson," he said. "And you are making a mistake helping me." "Let me be the judge of that," Emma replied, finally getting his shirt open. The wound was high on his shoulder, still bleeding but not as profusely as she had feared. "What happened?" "Wrong place, wrong time," Cole said, wincing as she began to clean the wound with whiskey. "Two men fighting over a card game. I tried to stop it. One of them decided to shoot anyway, and I happened to be in the way." Emma worked in silence for a moment, her initial fear giving way to the focused calm her mother had taught her. She had helped tend wounds before, living in a town where accidents and violence were common enough, but never alone, never with a stranger who looked at her with such intensity despite his pain. "This is going to hurt," she warned, threading the needle. "Everything hurts," Cole replied, but there was a hint of dry humor in his voice. "Do what you need to do." She stitched the wound as carefully as she could, her brow furrowed in concentration. He did not cry out, though she felt him tense beneath her hands with each pull of the thread. When she finished, she bandaged it tightly and sat back on her heels, suddenly aware of how close they were, how the lamplight cast shadows across his face, making him look both dangerous and vulnerable. "Thank you," Cole said quietly. "You did not have to help me. Most folks would not." "Most folks should be better than they are," Emma replied, beginning to clean up the bloody cloths. "Can you stand? You should not stay here. My father will be back in the morning, and he will want to know what happened." Cole tried to push himself up with his good arm, but the effort made him go even paler. Emma caught him before he could fall, her hands gripping his arm. "Maybe standing can wait," she said. "You lost a lot of blood." "I cannot stay here," Cole insisted. "I will not bring trouble to your door." "The trouble already came," Emma pointed out. "And you are in no condition to go anywhere. Can you at least tell me where you were headed?" Cole hesitated, and Emma saw something flicker across his face. Shame, perhaps, or embarrassment. "I have a room at the boarding house on 3rd Street. But I cannot pay for another week." I was supposed to get work at the cattle ranch outside town, but that was before this happened. Understanding washed over Emma, and with it came a pang of pity. She knew that look, had seen it on the faces of men who came through Laramie looking for work, for a fresh start, for anything that might give them a foothold in a hard world. This man, with his quiet dignity and his gray eyes, was just another person struggling to survive. "You can stay in the storage room tonight," she said, making the decision before she could question it. "There is a cot back there. In the morning we will figure out what to do next." "I cannot accept that," Cole said, but his voice was weak, his body swaying slightly. "You do not have much choice," Emma replied firmly. "Now come on before you pass out and I have to drag you." She helped him to the back room, a small space crowded with crates and supplies but clean enough. The cot was narrow and probably uncomfortable, but it was better than the street. Cole sank onto it with a barely suppressed groan, his eyes already beginning to close. "I will pay you back," he murmured. "I always pay my debts." "We will talk about it in the morning," Emma said, pulling a blanket over him. She stood there for a moment, watching him slip into sleep, and wondered what she had gotten herself into. She went home that night with her mind spinning, barely sleeping as she thought about the wounded stranger in her father's store. When she arrived the next morning, before her father, she found Cole awake, sitting on the edge of the cot and trying to move his injured shoulder with careful, measured movements. "You should rest," she said, setting down the basket of food she had brought. "I have rested enough," Cole replied. He looked better than he had the night before, though still pale. "I need to find work. I need to pay you back for your kindness." "You need to heal," Emma corrected. "That wound will get infected if you are not careful, and then you will be in real trouble." "I cannot afford to be careful," Cole said, standing up. He swayed slightly but caught himself. "I have been drifting for too long. I need to settle somewhere, earn an honest living. I cannot do that lying on a cot." Emma studied him, this proud man who clearly hated being helped, who saw her kindness as something to be repaid rather than accepted. The pity she had felt the night before stirred again, but this time it was mixed with something else. Curiosity, perhaps. Or admiration for his determination despite his circumstances. "My father needs help here at the store," she said suddenly. "The man who used to help with the heavy lifting left last month for the gold fields in Dakota. If you can manage it with your shoulder, the job is yours." Cole stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because you need work, and we need help," Emma replied simply. "Unless you would rather haul yourself out to that cattle ranch and pretend you can rope steers with one good arm." For the first time, Cole smiled. It transformed his face, chasing away the shadows and making him look younger, less burdened. "You do not pull your punches, do you?" "Life is too short for dancing around the truth," Emma said. "So what do you say?" "I say yes," Cole replied. "And thank you, again." "Then it is settled," Emma said, trying to ignore the way her heart had skipped when he smiled. "Now eat something. You are going to need your strength." Her father, Thomas Dalton, was a practical man who asked few questions when Emma explained that she had hired someone to help around the store. He looked Cole over with shrewd eyes, noted the bandaged shoulder, and simply nodded. "Can you lift a 50-pound sack of flour with that arm?" he asked. "Not today," Cole admitted, "but soon." "Then you can start with inventory and stocking the lighter goods," Thomas said. "We will work you up to the heavy stuff. Pay is 50 cents a day plus a meal at noon." "Fair, more than fair," Cole said, and Emma saw relief flood his features. The first few days were awkward. Cole moved carefully, his shoulder clearly paining him, though he never complained. Emma found herself watching him more than she should, noticing the way he interacted with customers with quiet courtesy, the way he organized the shelves with meticulous care, the way he always insisted on doing more than he probably should. She changed his bandages each evening after the store closed, and during those moments, they began to talk. She learned that he was 26 years old, originally from Missouri, that he had lost his family to fever when he was 19 and had been moving west ever since, looking for something he could not quite name. "I thought it would be easier out here," he said one evening as she cleaned his wound, which was healing well. "I thought a man could make something of himself if he just worked hard enough." "And you have found it is not that simple?" Emma asked. "Nothing is ever that simple," Cole replied. "But I keep trying. What else can you do?" Emma understood that sentiment better than he knew. She was 23, and while most women her age in Laramie were married with children, she had stayed to help her parents, to keep the store running, to care for her mother whose health had been failing for the past 2 years. She had turned down proposals from men she did not love, had chosen duty over the dreams she once had of adventure and romance. "You keep trying," she agreed softly. "That is all any of us can do." Cole looked at her then, really looked at her, and Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. There was something in his gaze that made her feel seen in a way she had not experienced before, as if he understood something about her that she had not spoken aloud. "You are a remarkable woman, Emma Dalton," he said quietly. "I am just doing what needs to be done," she replied, tying off the fresh bandage perhaps a bit more quickly than necessary. "That is what makes you remarkable," Cole said. After that night, something shifted between them. The pity Emma had initially felt for him began to fade, replaced by genuine respect, and something warmer that she was not quite ready to name. She noticed things about him that had nothing to do with his wounded shoulder or his circumstances. The way his eyes crinkled when he found something genuinely funny, the patience he showed with difficult customers, the care he took with even the smallest tasks. One afternoon, nearly 3 weeks after he had started working at the store, a woman came in with her young son. The boy was perhaps 5 years old, wide-eyed and curious, and he immediately gravitated toward Cole, who was stacking cans on a high shelf. "Are you a real cowboy?" the boy asked. Cole climbed down from the ladder and crouched to the boy's level, his face serious. "I have worked with cattle, yes." "Do you have a gun?" "I did once," Cole said, "but I found I did not need it as much as I thought I did." "Why not?" "Because most problems cannot be solved with a gun," Cole replied, "and the ones that can are usually not worth solving that way." The boy's mother smiled gratefully and steered her son toward the candy jars, but Emma had been listening, and the exchange stayed with her. This was not a man who glorified violence or danger. This was someone who had seen enough of the harsh realities of frontier life to value peace and honest work. That evening, as they closed up the store together, Emma found the courage to ask something that had been on her mind. "You ever regret it? Leaving Missouri, drifting all this time?" Cole paused in sweeping the floor, leaning on the broom. "Sometimes, but regret does not change anything. I lost everyone I loved back there. Staying would have just meant living in a house full of ghosts." "So you came west to escape them?" "No," Cole said slowly. "I came west because I needed to find out who I was without them." "Does that make sense?" "More than you know," Emma replied, thinking of all the times she had wondered who she might have been if circumstances had been different. "What about you?" Cole asked. "Do you ever think about leaving Laramie?" Emma considered the question. "I used to. I used to dream about seeing San Francisco or Santa Fe or anywhere that was not here, but my parents need me. My mother is sick and my father cannot run the store alone, so I stay." "That is not the same as not wanting to leave," Cole observed. "No," Emma admitted, "but wanting and doing are two different things." Cole set the broom aside and walked over to where she stood by the counter. In the fading light coming through the windows, his face was all planes and shadows, his gray eyes intent on hers. "You think I need your pity," he said quietly. "I have seen it in your eyes since that first night. You see a wounded man with no prospects and you feel sorry for him." Emma opened her mouth to protest, but Cole held up his hand. "I do not blame you for it," he continued. "I know what I look like. I know what my situation appears to be, but I do not need pity, Emma. I do not need someone to feel sorry for me or to save me. What I need, what I have discovered I want more than anything, is someone who sees me as I actually am and chooses to stand beside me anyway." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Cole, I am not asking you for anything," he said, taking a step back. "I just needed you to know. I needed you to understand that I am not some broken thing to be fixed. I am just a man trying to build a life worth living, and I would rather do that alone than have someone beside me out of obligation or sympathy." He left then, walking out into the evening air, leaving Emma standing alone in the store with her heart pounding and her mind reeling. She had not realized how transparent she had been, how he had seen through her kindness to the pity underneath. And worse, she had not realized until that very moment that what she felt for him had stopped being pity weeks ago. She barely slept that night, turning his words over and over in her mind. By morning, she knew what she needed to do. When Cole arrived at the store the next day, Emma was waiting for him. She had sent her father home early with some excuse about inventory, and she stood by the counter with her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I owe you an apology," she said before he could speak. "You were right. When I first met you, I did pity you. I saw a man who had been shot, who had no money, no prospects, and I felt sorry for you. That is why I helped you. That is why I offered you this job." Cole's expression was carefully neutral. "I appreciate your honesty." "I am not finished," Emma said, her voice stronger now. "That is why I did those things at first, but it is not why I kept doing them. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as someone to be pitied and started seeing you as someone I wanted to know, someone I respected. Someone who made me laugh and think and feel things I have not let myself feel in a very long time." She took a breath, gathering her courage. "You said you do not need pity, that what you need is someone who sees you as you are and chooses to stand beside you. Well, I see you, Cole Grayson. I see a man who is strong and kind and determined. I see someone who does not give up even when life keeps knocking him down. I see someone worth knowing, worth caring about. And if you will let me, I would very much like to stand beside you. Not out of pity or obligation, but because I choose to." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Cole stared at her, his gray eyes searching her face, and Emma forced herself to hold his gaze, to let him see the truth of her words. Then he smiled, that same transformative smile that had caught her off guard weeks ago, and crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides. He took her hands in his, and Emma felt the calluses on his palms, the strength in his fingers. "Emma Dalton," he said, "you are the most infuriatingly wonderful woman I have ever met." "Is that a yes?" she asked, unable to keep the tremor out of her voice. "That is most definitely a yes," Cole replied, and then he was kissing her, his lips warm and gentle against hers, and Emma felt the world tilt on its axis. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Emma laughed. "My father is going to have questions. Then we will answer them," Cole said. Together. Thomas Dalton did indeed have questions when they told him that evening that they were courting. He looked at Cole with the stern expression of a father protecting his daughter and asked the questions Emma had expected. What were Cole's intentions? What were his prospects? How did he intend to provide for a family? Cole answered each question honestly and directly. His intentions were honorable. His prospects were improving daily as he healed and proved his worth at the store. He intended to save every penny he could, to eventually buy a piece of land and build something lasting. He understood if Thomas felt it was too soon, if he wanted to wait and see if Cole proved reliable. "I do not have much to offer her yet," Cole admitted. "But I swear to you, I will work every day of my life to be the man she deserves." Thomas was quiet for a long moment, then looked at his daughter. "What do you want, Emma?" "I want him, Papa," Emma said simply. "I want to see where this goes." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then I will not stand in your way, but you will court properly with respect and propriety." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," Cole said, relief evident in his voice. The next few months were perhaps the happiest of Emma's life. Cole proved himself invaluable at the store, his shoulder healing completely and his strength returning. He worked hard, saved his money, and every Sunday afternoon, he and Emma would walk together through Laramie, talking about everything and nothing. They shared their dreams with each other. Cole spoke of his desire to have land of his own, not just to work someone else's cattle, but to build something that could last, that could be passed down to children someday. Emma talked about the books she loved to read, the places she still hoped to see, the life she wanted that was bigger than just the walls of the general store. "We could do it together," Cole said one afternoon as they sat by the river that ran near town. "Save up, buy land, build a ranch. You could still have adventure, just a different kind." "Are you proposing a business venture or something else?" Emma teased, though her heart was beating fast. "Maybe both," Cole replied, taking her hand. "It is too soon to make promises, I know. But I want you to know that when I think about the future, you are in every part of it." "You are in mine too," Emma whispered, leaning her head against his shoulder. They faced challenges, of course. There were people in Laramie who looked at Cole with suspicion, who remembered that he had arrived in town bleeding and penniless. There were women who whispered about Emma, wondering why she would choose a drifter over more established suitors. But Emma found that she did not care about the gossip. For the first time in her life, she was choosing what she wanted rather than what was expected of her, and it felt like freedom. Her mother's health, which had been declining steadily, took a turn for the worse that summer. Emma spent long hours at her bedside, and Cole was there too, helping Thomas manage the store so Emma could focus on her mother's care. He proved himself in those difficult weeks, showing a compassion and steadiness that made Thomas finally accept him not just as an employee, but as part of the family. When Emma's mother passed away peacefully one August morning, Cole held Emma as she wept, offering no empty platitudes, just his steady presence. He helped arrange the funeral, helped receive the mourners, helped Thomas navigate the fog of grief that descended after losing a wife of 30 years. "Thank you for being here," Emma said to him late one night after the funeral, when everyone else had gone and they sat together on the porch of her family's home. "There is nowhere else I would be," Cole replied. "You stood beside me when I was at my lowest. It is an honor to stand beside you now." "This is not what you signed up for," Emma said, wiping at her tears. "Death and grief and Emma," Cole interrupted gently. "This is exactly what I signed up for, all of it. The joy and the sorrow, the easy days and the hard ones. That is what standing beside someone means." She kissed him then, tasting salt from her tears, and felt the truth of his words settle into her bones. This was not pity or obligation. This was choice, made and remade every single day. As the months passed, and autumn painted the Wyoming landscape in gold and crimson, Cole continued to save his money with single-minded determination. He took on extra work when he could find it, helping with harvests, repairing fences, anything that would add to his savings. Emma watched him work himself nearly to exhaustion and worried, but when she tried to tell him to slow down, he just shook his head. "I have a plan," he said. "Trust me." In October, nearly 8 months after he had stumbled into her life bleeding and desperate, Cole asked Thomas for permission to marry Emma. They were in the store after closing, and Emma pretended to be doing inventory in the back room while straining to hear every word. "I love your daughter," she heard Cole say. "I have loved her almost from the beginning, though I was too proud to admit it at first. I know I came to Laramie with nothing. I know I am not the match you might have hoped for her. But I promise you I will spend the rest of my life working to make her happy." "Do you have a plan?" Thomas asked. "A way to support her?" "Yes, sir," Cole said. "I have been saving, and I have enough now to make a down payment on the Henderson property." Emma's breath caught. The Henderson property was 100 acres of good grazing land just north of Laramie, with a small house and a barn. Old man Henderson had died without heirs, and the bank had been trying to sell it for months. "That is a solid piece of land," Thomas said thoughtfully. "You would run cattle?" "To start," Cole replied. "And I was hoping to build a business breeding horses as well. There is always demand for good horses in Wyoming." Thomas was quiet for so long that Emma almost gave up her pretense and rushed out to hear his answer. Finally, he spoke. "You have my permission to ask her. But the decision is hers to make." Cole found her in the back room where she had given up all pretense of working and was simply waiting. He looked nervous, this man who had faced down bullets and poverty and loss with such quiet strength. "You heard?" he asked. "I heard," Emma confirmed. "Then you know what I am about to ask you." "I might," Emma said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "But I think I would like to hear it anyway." Cole took both her hands in his, and Emma saw that they were trembling slightly. "Emma Dalton, I came to this town with nothing but the clothes on my back and a bullet in my shoulder. You could have turned me away and no one would have blamed you. Instead, you saved my life. But more than that, you gave me a reason to want to live it. You challenged me, infuriated me, made me see myself more clearly than I ever had before. You took away my excuses and showed me what I could be if I just tried. I do not need your pity. I do not need you to save me. What I need is you beside me, every day for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" Emma did not hesitate. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He kissed her then, and she felt the rightness of it in every fiber of her being. This was not the safe choice or the expected choice. This was the choice of her heart, and it felt like coming home. They were married in November in a simple ceremony at the church in Laramie, with half the town in attendance. Emma wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her, and carried wildflowers that Cole had ridden out to gather at dawn. When he saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears, and Emma knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Thomas gave them his blessing and a generous wedding gift, enough money to buy not just the Henderson property, but also a small herd of cattle and 2 good horses to start Cole's breeding program. It was more than Emma had expected, and she hugged her father tightly, grateful for his support. "Your mother would have liked him," Thomas said quietly. "She always said you needed someone strong enough to match you." "She was right," Emma replied, looking across the room to where Cole was talking with some of the other ranchers, already making the connections that would help him succeed. They moved into the Henderson property, which Emma immediately started calling the Grayson Ranch despite Cole's protests that it was not much of a ranch yet. The house was small and needed work, but it had good bones, and Emma threw herself into making it a home. She hung curtains she sewed herself, planted a garden that would bloom come spring, and organized the chaos of their combined possessions into something resembling order. Cole worked from dawn until long after dark, repairing fences, tending the cattle, beginning the careful process of breeding horses. Emma helped when she could, learning about ranch work with the same determination she had once applied to running the store. Her father hired someone new to help at the general store, telling Emma that it was time for her to build her own life. The first winter was hard. They were still learning to live together, to navigate the rhythms of married life. Money was tight, and there were nights when Emma worried they had taken on too much too fast. But Cole never wavered in his determination, and his faith gave her strength. "We will make this work," he told her one cold December night as they huddled together by the fire. "I promise you, Emma. This will work." "I know it will," Emma replied, "because we are doing it together." Spring brought new life to the ranch. The cattle bore healthy calves, and the two mares Cole had purchased were both pregnant, promising the start of his horse breeding program. Emma's garden burst into bloom, and she started selling vegetables in town, adding to their income. They settled into a rhythm, learning each other's habits and quirks. Emma discovered that Cole sang when he thought no one was listening, old songs from his childhood in Missouri. Cole learned that Emma talked to the horses when she fed them, telling them about her day as if they understood every word. They had their disagreements, of course. Emma thought Cole pushed himself too hard, taking on too many projects at once. Cole worried that Emma did not ask for enough help, trying to do everything herself rather than letting him share the burden. But they learned to talk through their problems, to compromise, to choose partnership over pride. In the summer, Emma realized she was pregnant. She waited until she was certain, then told Cole one evening after supper. He stared at her for a long moment, his eyes wide with shock, then let out a whoop of joy that probably carried all the way to town. He picked her up and spun her around until she laughingly begged him to stop before she got dizzy. "We are going to have a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We are going to be parents." "Are you frightened?" Emma asked, because she certainly was. "Terrified," Cole admitted. "But also happier than I have ever been in my life." The pregnancy was not easy. Emma was sick for the first few months, and the summer heat made everything worse. But Cole was patient and attentive, taking on even more of the work so she could rest. He brought her cool water from the well, prepared simple meals when the smell of cooking meat made her nauseous, and held her when she cried from frustration at her body's rebellion. "You are growing a whole human being," he reminded her. "I think you are allowed to feel poorly." Their son was born in March of 1880, during a late-season snowstorm that trapped them in the house for 3 days. The midwife from town could not get through, so it was just Emma and Cole, facing the terror and wonder of childbirth together. Cole had helped with countless cattle births and a few horses, but he admitted later that nothing had prepared him for the fear of watching Emma in pain, knowing there was so little he could do to help. But he stayed with her, held her hand, whispered encouragement, and when their son finally entered the world with a healthy cry, Cole wept openly. They named him Samuel, after Cole's father, and he was perfect. Small and red and screaming, but perfect. Emma held him and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. "Thank you," Cole said, kissing her forehead as she cradled their son. "Thank you for this gift." "We made him together," Emma replied tiredly. "This is our miracle." The years that followed were full of hard work and small joys. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. Cole's reputation for breeding quality horses spread, and buyers came from as far as Cheyenne to purchase from him. They hired a hand to help with the cattle, a young man named Jack who proved reliable and hardworking. Samuel grew into a bright, curious boy who followed his father everywhere, learning about horses and cattle before he could properly form sentences. Emma divided her time between caring for their son, managing the household, and helping Cole with the paperwork side of the ranch business. She discovered she had a head for numbers and organization, and soon she was handling all their accounts and contracts. In 1883, Emma gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose. She had her father's gray eyes and her mother's determination, and she completed their family in ways Emma had not realized were incomplete. Thomas, now growing older and considering selling the general store, was a regular visitor to the ranch. He delighted in his grandchildren and was proud of what Cole and Emma had built together. "You chose well," he told Emma one afternoon as they watched Cole and Samuel working with a young horse in the corral. "I had my doubts at first, I will admit, but he has proven himself 100 times over." "He never needed to prove himself to me," Emma replied. "I knew who he was from the beginning. It just took me a while to understand that what I felt was not pity but recognition. I saw myself in him, someone trying to build something meaningful out of difficult circumstances." "And now look at you," Thomas said, gesturing at the thriving ranch, the happy children, the life they had created. "You built something remarkable." "We built it," Emma corrected. "Together. That is what makes it remarkable." Cole came to find her after Thomas left, Samuel running ahead of him toward the house where Rose was napping. He put his arm around Emma's waist and pulled her close, both of them looking out at the land they had transformed from a neglected property into a working ranch. "Do you remember what you said to me that day in the store?" Cole asked. "When you told me you saw me for who I really was?" "I remember," Emma said. "I did not believe you then," Cole admitted. "I thought you were just being kind, trying to make me feel better about accepting your help. But you were right. You did see me. You saw past the wounded pride and the desperation to the man I wanted to be, and somehow, standing beside you, I became that man." "You were always that man," Emma said. "You just needed someone to remind you." "No," Cole said, turning her to face him. "I needed you, specifically you. Your strength, your faith, your refusal to let me settle for less than I was capable of. You did not save me, Emma. You made me want to save myself. There is a difference." Emma kissed him, this man who had stumbled into her life bleeding and desperate and had somehow become her whole world. "We saved each other," she said. "That is what love does." The ranch continued to prosper. By 1885, they had expanded their holdings, purchasing the adjacent property when it came up for sale. They built a larger house, though they kept the original as a guest house for when Thomas visited or when they hired seasonal help. Cole's horses became famous throughout Wyoming and beyond. He had an eye for breeding quality animals, and his patience with training them meant they were well-mannered as well as strong. Buyers trusted the Grayson name, and that reputation translated into success. Emma started a small business of her own, selling preserves and baked goods in town. It began as a way to use the abundant fruit from the orchard they had planted, but it quickly grew into something more. Women in Laramie sought out her strawberry jam and her apple butter, and she took pride in this enterprise that was entirely her own. Samuel, now 5 years old, was already showing signs of his father's gift with horses. He could calm a skittish mare with just his voice, and Cole beamed with pride watching his son work. Rose, at 2, was fearless and curious, into everything and afraid of nothing. Emma often joked that she would probably be the one to expand the ranch even further someday. In the evenings, after the children were in bed, Emma and Cole would sit on the porch they had built, watching the sun set over their land. These were the moments Emma treasured most, the quiet intimacy of simply being together after a long day of work. "Do you ever miss it?" Cole asked one evening. "Town life, the store, the ease of it." "Never," Emma said truthfully. This life is harder in many ways, but it is ours. We built it from nothing. Every board in this house, every fence post, every horse in that barn represents something we worked for together. How could I miss something that was just handed to me? I am glad, Cole said, taking her hand, because I cannot imagine doing this with anyone else. Good thing you do not have to, Emma replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of their children's lives. Samuel learned to read, devouring every book they could get him. Rose started helping her mother in the kitchen, showing an aptitude for baking that suggested the preserve business might have a successor someday. In 1888, Thomas finally sold the general store and moved out to the ranch permanently. He built himself a small cabin on the property and spent his days helping Cole with the horses and spoiling his grandchildren. It was a peaceful retirement, and Emma was grateful to have him close. That same year, they faced their biggest challenge when a harsh winter killed several of their cattle and damaged the barn. The financial loss was significant, and for the first time since those early struggling days, Emma found herself worrying about money again. But Cole, who had once been a penniless drifter with a bullet in his shoulder, faced the crisis with calm determination. They would rebuild, he said. They had done it before, and they would do it again. They sold some of their horses to cover immediate expenses, took out a loan from the bank for repairs, and worked twice as hard to make up for the losses. Emma watched him during those difficult months and marveled at how far they had both come. The man who had once been so proud he could barely accept help now had no problem asking for assistance when he needed it. He borrowed equipment from neighbors, accepted their offers of labor to rebuild the barn, and swallowed his pride to do what was necessary for his family. "You have changed," Emma told him one night. "From the man I first met." "So have you," Cole replied. "We have both changed. We grew together." "Do you think that is what love is?" Emma asked. "Growing together instead of apart?" "I think that is exactly what love is," Cole said. They recovered from that hard winter as they had recovered from every challenge before it. The new barn was bigger and better than the old one. The cattle herd rebuilt itself. The horse business continued to thrive. And through it all, Emma and Cole stood beside each other, partners in every sense of the word. In 1890, Emma gave birth to their third child, another son they named Thomas after her father. The older Thomas wept when they told him, honored by the gesture. This baby was easier than the first two had been, and Emma recovered quickly, eager to get back to the work she loved. Samuel, now 10, was already taking on real responsibilities around the ranch. Cole taught him everything he knew about horses, and the boy soaked it up like a sponge. Rose, 7, divided her time between helping her mother with the preserves business and following her brother around the ranch. Little Thomas was too young for anything but being spoiled by everyone. Life settled into a comfortable pattern. The ranch was successful, the children were healthy and happy, and Emma and Cole had built something that would last long after they were gone. They had friends in town, respect in the community, and most importantly, they had each other. One evening in late summer of 1891, Cole found Emma in the kitchen, canning tomatoes from their abundant garden. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, and she leaned back against him, comfortable in his embrace. "You remember what you said to me that day?" he asked. "The day you told me you did not pity me anymore." "I remember every word," Emma said. "You told me you saw me as I was and chose to stand beside me," Cole said. "You gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Not your help, not your charity, but your choice. You chose me, Emma. Every day you keep choosing me." "And you keep choosing me," Emma replied, turning in his arms to face him. That is what we promised each other, to stand beside each other through everything. I want you to know something, Cole said seriously. I want you to know that I am grateful for every single day. When I stumbled into your life that night, bleeding and desperate, I was at the lowest point I had ever been. I thought I had nothing to offer anyone. I thought I was just going to keep drifting until I disappeared entirely. But you saw something in me worth saving. Not because you pitied me, but because you recognized something of yourself in me. You saw potential where I saw failure. You saw strength where I saw weakness. You saw a man worth loving when I did not even love myself. Cole, Emma whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Let me finish, he said gently. You were right when you said I did not need pity. I did not need someone to save me. What I needed was someone brave enough to stand beside me while I saved myself. Someone who believed in me enough to make me believe in myself. You gave me that gift, Emma. You gave me everything. And I want you to know that every success we have had, every good thing in our life, starts with that choice you made. The choice to see me not as I was, but as I could be. Emma cupped his face in her hands, looking into those gray eyes that had first caught her attention so many years ago. And I want you to know that you gave me just as much. You showed me what it meant to choose bravely, to take a risk on something uncertain. You showed me that duty and love do not have to be separate things, that I could honor my family and still build my own life. You made me braver, Cole. You made me more myself than I ever was before. They kissed, and Emma felt the same flutter in her heart that she had felt that first time, all those years ago in the general store. Some things, she realized, never changed. The chemistry between them, the love that had grown from such uncertain beginnings, the partnership that had carried them through every trial, those things were constant. As the years continued to pass, their children grew. Samuel became a skilled horseman, eventually taking over much of the breeding program. At 18, he was already being courted by ranchers who wanted him to work with their stock, but he chose to stay and build the family business even larger. Rose, at 15, had turned the preserves business into a thriving enterprise, supplying stores throughout the territory. She had her mother's head for business and her father's determination, a formidable combination. Young Thomas, now 8, showed signs of being the scholar of the family, more interested in books and learning than in ranch work. Emma and Cole encouraged all of it, wanting their children to find their own paths. In 1896, Samuel married a girl from Cheyenne named Sarah, and they built a house on the ranch property. The family was expanding, the next generation beginning to take root. Emma became a grandmother in 1897 when Sarah gave birth to a daughter, and she marveled at the passage of time, at how far they had all come. Cole, now in his 40s, had silver threading through his dark hair. The hard physical labor of ranch life had kept him strong. But Emma could see the small signs of aging, the way he moved a bit more carefully in the mornings, the lines around his eyes that deepened each year. She loved every one of those lines, those marks of time and experience. They were a map of the life they had lived together, the laughter and tears, the struggles and triumphs. When she looked at him, she did not see a middle-aged rancher. She saw the wounded young man who had stumbled into her store, the determined worker who had refused to be defined by his circumstances, the loving husband who had built a life with her piece by careful piece. Thomas Sr. passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1898, surrounded by family. He was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of everything his daughter and son-in-law had built. His death was a blow, but it was softened by the knowledge that he had lived to see his family thrive, that his grandchildren and great-grandchild had known his love. At the funeral, Cole spoke about how Thomas had given him a chance when he had nothing, how that act of faith had changed everything. Emma held his hand as he spoke, proud of this man who had learned to accept kindness without shame, who understood that needing help was not weakness but simply part of being human. The ranch continued to grow and evolve. They added new buildings, expanded their holdings further, established a reputation that reached beyond Wyoming. The Grayson Ranch was known throughout the West for quality horses and honest dealing, a legacy that Emma and Cole had built from absolutely nothing. In 1900, as the new century dawned, Emma and Cole sat on their porch watching their grandchildren play in the yard. Samuel and Sarah's daughter was 3 now, and Rose had married a young rancher from a neighboring property, bringing another good man into the family fold. "We did it," Emma said quietly. "We actually did it." "Did what?" Cole asked, though she suspected he knew. "Built something that lasts," Emma said. "Built a family, a home, a legacy. When I think about where we started, about that night when you collapsed against the wall of my father's store, bleeding and desperate, and I look at all of this, it seems impossible." "It was possible because of you," Cole said. "Because you did not give up on me even when I had given up on myself." "No," Emma corrected gently. "It was possible because we did not give up on each other, because when things got hard we chose to stand together, because we saw each other, truly saw each other, and decided that was enough." Cole pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching their grandchildren play, watching the sun set over land they had made productive through years of hard work. The young man who had needed no one's pity, and the young woman who had learned to see past surface circumstances to the person beneath, had built an empire of love and family and honest labor. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had not helped me that night?" Cole asked. "If you had just locked the door and let me bleed in the street?" "I try not to think about it," Emma admitted. "Because that would mean a world without all of this. Without our children, our grandchildren, this life we have made. I cannot imagine that world, Cole. I do not want to imagine it." "Neither do I," Cole said. "But I think about it sometimes anyway. I think about how close I came to missing all of this. How one different choice, one moment of fear or indifference on your part would have meant I never knew what it was to be truly loved. To be part of something bigger than myself, to build something that mattered." "But I did not make that choice," Emma reminded him. "I opened the door. I pulled you inside. I chose to help, and then I chose to see you, and then I chose to love you, and you made those same choices. That is what brought us here." As the last light faded from the sky and the stars began to appear, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The wounded cowboy and the shopkeeper's daughter, both trapped in circumstances that seemed to define them, had found each other and built something neither could have created alone. She thought about that first night, when she had seen Cole bleeding against the wall and acted on instinct and compassion. She thought about how her initial pity had transformed into respect, admiration, and finally love. She thought about all the moments of choice along the way, the decision to offer him work, to stand up to gossip, to risk her heart on someone the world saw as a poor prospect. And she thought about Cole's journey, from a proud man who hated accepting help to a husband and father who understood that partnership meant both giving and receiving. That strength came not from standing alone, but from choosing the right person to stand beside. Their story was not one of rescue or salvation. It was a story of recognition, of two people seeing in each other the potential for something extraordinary and choosing to nurture that potential together. Emma had not saved Cole, and Cole had not saved Emma. They had saved each other, or perhaps more accurately, they had given each other the courage and support to save themselves. The years continued their steady march. Rose had children of her own. Thomas grew into a young man and shocked everyone by deciding to become a teacher, bringing education to ranch families throughout the territory. Samuel expanded the horse operation even further, making the Grayson name synonymous with quality throughout the West. Emma and Cole grew older together, their hair going silver, their bodies showing the wear of decades of hard work. But the love between them never dimmed. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming something richer and more complex than the passionate romance of their early days. They still sat on the porch every evening when weather permitted, still held hands, still talked about everything and nothing. They knew each other's stories by heart now, could finish each other's sentences, could read each other's moods with a glance. They had become so intertwined that it was hard to remember a time when they had been separate people. In the summer of 1905, they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a party that brought family and friends from throughout Wyoming and beyond. Samuel made a toast, talking about how his parents had built something from nothing, how they had shown their children what real partnership looked like. "My father came to Laramie with nothing but determination and a bullet wound," Samuel said, to laughter from the crowd. "My mother saw past the circumstances to the man beneath. They taught us that where you start does not matter nearly as much as where you are willing to go. That love is not about rescuing or being rescued, but about choosing to walk the same path, day after day, through good times and bad. They showed us what it means to truly see another person and to let yourself be seen in return." Emma cried during the toast, and Cole held her hand, his own eyes suspiciously bright. When the party finally ended and they were alone again, they walked out to their favorite spot on the porch, looking out at the ranch that had been their life's work. 25 years, Emma said wonderingly. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "I would do it all again," Cole said. "Every hard moment, every challenge, every struggle, it was worth it for this." "For what?" Emma asked. "For you beside me," Cole said simply. "That was all I ever really needed. Not pity, not charity, not someone to save me. Just you, choosing to stand beside me day after day, year after year. You gave me that gift, Emma. You gave me everything." Emma kissed him, tasting salt from tears she had not realized she was crying. "We gave each other everything," she corrected. "That is what love does. It multiplies rather than divides. We are so much more together than we ever could have been apart." They stood there as the night deepened around them, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love story that would echo through generations. Their grandchildren would tell their children about the wounded cowboy and the brave young woman who had seen past his circumstances to the man beneath. About how they had built an empire from nothing but hard work and unwavering commitment to each other. But Emma knew the real story was simpler and more profound than any legend. It was about choice, about seeing and being seen, about standing beside someone not because they needed you but because you chose them every single day. About building something together that neither could have created alone. The cowboy had not needed pity. He had needed exactly what Emma had given him, someone who saw his worth when he could not see it himself, someone who stood beside him while he found his own strength. And Emma had needed exactly what Cole had given her, the courage to choose her own path, the partnership that allowed her to be fully herself. As they walked back into the house they had built together, filled with the photos and memories of a life well lived, Emma felt a deep contentment settle over her. They had done it. Against all odds, despite all the challenges, they had built something beautiful and lasting. Not through rescue or salvation, but through the simple, powerful act of choosing each other, again and again and again. The story of the wounded cowboy and the shopkeeper's daughter became part of Laramie's history, a tale told and retold with growing embellishment over the years. But those who knew them best understood that the real story was not about drama or rescue. It was about something quieter and more powerful, the kind of love that grew slowly and lasted forever, built on a foundation of mutual respect, genuine partnership, and the courage to see each other truly. Years later, when Emma was in her 70s and Cole was slowing down from a lifetime of hard work, they still sat on that porch every evening. Their children were grown with families of their own. Their grandchildren were starting to have children. The ranch had passed primarily to Samuel's capable hands, though Cole still consulted on the horse breeding and Emma still made preserves, more for the joy of it now than necessity. One cool evening in autumn, as the leaves turned gold and the air carried the first hint of winter, Cole turned to Emma with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," he said. Emma's heart clenched with sudden fear. "What is it? Are you ill?" No, Cole assured her quickly. "Nothing like that. I just realized that I never properly thanked you." "Thank me for what?" Emma asked, puzzled. "You thank me every day." "For saving my life," Cole said. "Not just that first night when you pulled me into the store and stitched up my shoulder, but for every day after. For seeing me when I felt invisible. For believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself. For standing beside me when you could have chosen someone easier, someone who already had prospects and property and respectability. You took a chance on a wounded drifter with nothing to his name, and you never once made me feel like I owed you for it. You gave me the greatest gift anyone can give another person. You let me earn my own way while standing beside me as I did it." "Cole," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion, "you do not have to thank me for loving you. That was never a burden or a sacrifice. It was the greatest privilege of my life." "I know," Cole said, "but I wanted you to hear it anyway. I wanted you to know that I understand what you did for me. You did not pity me, even when I probably deserved pity. You did not try to save me, even when I needed saving. Instead, you offered me something far more valuable: partnership. You stood beside me and let me save myself while making sure I did not have to do it alone. That took wisdom and strength and faith, Emma. You could have just felt sorry for me. You could have offered charity and called it kindness. But you did not. You offered me your hand as an equal, and you waited for me to be strong enough to take it." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his body beside hers. "We saved each other," she said softly. "I was as lost as you were, just in a different way. I had forgotten how to choose my own path, had accepted that duty meant sacrifice. You showed me that I could honor my responsibilities and still build my own life, that I could be a good daughter and also a woman with dreams of my own. We gave each other permission to be more than our circumstances, Cole. That is what love does." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The ranch spread out before them, testament to everything they had built together. Not just the land and the buildings and the thriving business, but the family, the love, the legacy that would outlive them both. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Emma asked. "I think about that night, about you bleeding against the wall of my father's store. And I think about how easily it could have gone differently. How I could have been too frightened to open the door, how you could have been too proud to accept help, how any one of 100 different choices could have meant we never found each other. And it terrifies me, Cole. It terrifies me to think how close we came to missing this. But we did not miss it," Cole reminded her gently. "We made the choices that brought us here. You opened the door, I accepted help. You offered me work, I chose to stay. Every step of the way we chose each other. That was not luck or chance, Emma. That was us making the decision to walk toward each other instead of away. "I would choose you again," Emma said. "1,000 times over I would choose you, and I would choose you," Cole replied. "Every single time." As full darkness fell, and the stars emerged one by one, they finally went inside to the house that had been their home for over 2 decades. Their children and grandchildren would visit tomorrow, filling the rooms with noise and laughter and life. But tonight, it was just the two of them, as it had been in the beginning. Emma prepared a simple supper while Cole lit the lamps, the domestic rhythm of their life together as familiar as breathing. They ate at the table they had built together in those early days, sitting in chairs that had been worn smooth by years of use. And they talked, as they always did, about everything and nothing, about the ranch and the family and the memories they had accumulated over a lifetime together. Later, as they prepared for bed, Emma caught sight of their reflections in the mirror. Two old people, their hair silver, their faces lined with age and experience. But when Cole came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, she saw what she always saw: the wounded young man who had stumbled into her life and changed everything, the partner who had stood beside her through joy and sorrow, the love of her life. "We got our happily ever after," she said softly. "We did," Cole agreed. "We earned it day by day, choice by choice. We built it together." And that, Emma thought as she turned in his arms to kiss him goodnight, was the truest thing of all. They had not been handed a fairy tale. They had created their own story through hard work and unwavering commitment, through the simple but profound act of choosing each other every single day. The years that remained to them were good ones. They watched their family continue to grow and thrive. They celebrated birthdays and weddings and births. They mourned losses and celebrated triumphs. And through it all, they remained what they had always been since that night in the general store: partners. When Cole finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, with Emma holding his hand, she grieved deeply. But she also celebrated a life well lived, a love story that had spanned decades and changed not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone they had touched. She lived another 5 years after Cole's death, surrounded by family, still making her preserves, still telling stories about the early days to grandchildren and great-grandchildren who listened with wide eyes. She talked about the wounded cowboy who had needed not her pity but her partnership, about the choice she had made to see him as he could be rather than as he was, about the life they had built together from absolutely nothing. And when her time finally came, when she closed her eyes for the last time in the house she and Cole had made a home, she went peacefully, knowing that she had lived a life of purpose and love. She had made the right choice that night so many years ago. She had opened the door, offered her hand, and stood beside a man who needed not her pity but her presence. And together, they had built something beautiful. The Grayson Ranch continued to thrive under Samuel's care and eventually passed to his children. The story of Emma and Cole became family legend, a reminder to each new generation about the power of seeing past circumstances to the person beneath, about the importance of partnership over rescue, about the simple truth that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is not help, but the chance to help themselves while you stand beside them. Their graves sat side by side on the hill overlooking the ranch, next to Thomas Dalton, the three of them watching over the legacy they had built together. And on summer evenings, when the light hit just right and the wind whispered through the grass, it was easy to imagine them there still, the shopkeeper's daughter and her cowboy, sitting together as they always had, hands clasped, choosing each other still, even in eternity.